welcome you all to Sustainable Lifestyle Global Network. We are trying to see that how many people work in the sustainability perspective, what they do, how they do it, and what has been the journey. So today we are going to talk to Anil Gokarna, and he is a person who now takes care of a lot of waste in Pune. But rather, from now on, I won't say it as a waste, but he is a resource manager. So we are going to speak to him, understand his journey, and what message he has for us.
Thanks Niranjan for that introduction. So my name is Anil Gokarna. I've actually started this company called ProEarth in 2014. Just to give you a background, I'm actually an automobile engineer. My aspiration when I was studying was to really be part of large global automobile companies. But through my journey of engineering and my career with automobile companies, it became clear to me that there were so many things that are unsustainable in the way we lead our lives. And I was basically in sales and marketing, and so I got the opportunity actually to travel around the country a lot. So I ended up visiting a lot of different parts of the country, and the one thing that was always staying with me through my travels is the fact that our country, there are basic issues that are still not in place, like electricity, water, waste. These are large issues that somehow we have not been able to handle. And for me, the inspiring, I would say, for me to start this organization and really go into this field, the main inspiration was, I think it starts with my grandparents and the way they lived, and the fact that they were part of the freedom struggle, and so the stories around how difficult things were and how resources were short, and how their vision was for the next generation to live, and how this country would develop. And in my growing up years, there was a lot of this conversation about how Gandhi lived, for example, and what was his vision about India, the decentralized small models of economy that were more healthy and sustainable. A lot of people in this country that need all kinds of basic access to basics, which are the most important. And I think going through that experience then eventually led me to I would say a life-changing transformation. So in 2012, it really gave me an opportunity to decide and make a decision that whole career path that I had thought of for myself was not viable, and I had to look for something different that really touches people's lives in a more significant way.
And coming to this, so how would you weigh your career before 2014 and now?
Yeah, so in before 2014, I would say, I was obviously earning a lot, right? And the aspirations were buy a house, have the best car around, be part of like the leaders of industry and that sort of vision. But obviously that was not really meaningful and satisfying at the end of the day. And once I decided to make this move, obviously it took a lot of courage and a lot of support from the rest of my close family for this really to happen. My wife had to obviously be part of that decision. And given that she was part of this, she wholeheartedly backed the entire decision, and that's what actually made it more viable for behind it. So it was like, leave first, empty your whatever you have filled up, and in terms of your desires and your aspirations, bring it down to absolute bare minimum, and then really start analyzing what are your deeper motivations. And so I spent the next 2 years actually searching for that activity that I want to spend the rest of my life doing.
That's right.
I visited a lot of farms. I spent 1 month at Dr. Vandana Shiva's farm at Dehradun, at Navdanya. And I think that was probably my real, I would say, the core of my inspiration, and the need to act and manifest whatever next I had to do actually came from that visit, that stay on that farm, where there was an opportunity really to study a lot of subjects around sustainability, how our current economy is not viable, how our current way of living is causing such huge impacts on the planet, which are not perceivable actually. When you're living in an urban environment, you don't see it.
Yeah.
So that sort of really inspired me, and eventually that inspired it was not an inspiration per se, but it was actually inspiration that drove action out of it.
True.
Yeah,
because many times when we see people who come into this domain, they either come for money,
yes,
and very soon they are disillusioned because money is not seen that way.
correct.
A lot of that goes into satisfaction also, and you also get this idea that yes, you are doing something good for yourself and obviously for the society and obviously for the next generation that is coming in. So many times this is what the problem is with many people who get into this business without even getting an inspiration or a turning point.
Absolutely.
And they see it purely as business.
Yes.
But people like you, when they see it through a transformation, when they experience those 2 years from 2012 to 2014, that how to live minimalistic, how to really transform yourself, and then they get more inspiration from outside, and that's how it becomes an inspiration to start something amazingly new. So Anil, that has been an amazing journey for you, and now it is 2021,
Yes.
and it has been more than 7 years now. My question would be in this regard, what has been your challenge for the past 7 years as a person who is trying to give this service?
Yes. So I think there are many challenges, obviously, because sustainable living is something that is not an imposition. There are no laws to get you to do it. There is no apparent value that you're getting. I mean, if you just look at it purely in terms of economics, sometimes people assume that it doesn't really give you any value, or so it's. I think the first challenge is to convince people to buy into the fact that you have to make a habit change which affects you personally, your family, and and then eventually transforms your behavior in a certain way that leads to an impact. I think so that the biggest challenge in this field, I think, is about creating awareness.
True.
And awareness that transforms habit. It's not about just knowledge is not going to change your behavior.
It is not.
So it requires a combination of giving people knowledge and also pushing them to change their behavior.
A bungalow, you can convince a family. But when there are a group of families, something like a society, where you have 20 families coming together, or today's trend is more than 100 to 500 families also live in a particular society. So changing all of them becomes a big challenge. So how have you been able to get through that?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about my first impression when I was going to interact with larger communities was, how do I get people to really sign on a project and really put down money,
yes,
for them to actually transform their community. So it took a lot of effort from our side. It was not easy in the beginning. So it was like, we were just doing blank visits to housing complexes, trying to meet committee members, trying to meet people decision makers, people who are influencing, influencers basically. And then it took us almost 6 to 8 months of really persistent discussions, meeting many communities to crack our first project. And that was and we just started with a very small community of 10 households, who signed on a project saying that, okay, we'll now begin to segregate our waste, we'll give you our wet waste separately, and we'll invest in a composting facility in our compound. And there are so many other issues around it, like people think that it's going to start to smell, it's going to create mess, it's going to create pests and other problems. So there are a lot of lot of steps of resistance that you have to overcome for something to happen along these lines.
So Anil, in this case I would like to ask you one thing, because your video would be seen by many, and who would like to come into this kind of a service where they want to become resource managers.
Right.
So is it, when we see 2014, when you started this service, there was obviously, awareness was there,
Yes.
but still very less people had actually come into the service sector, providing this kind of a service that you give. So there are many people who would like to come into your kind of a profession. So do they also feel that, or would be the same amount of time needed for them also to convince people, or now the time has become more shorter? Is it more, I would say like, it is less time consuming to convince people, or is it still the same? You have to still go through 8 months of pursuance and then only you can start your service?
No, so there's a lot of good news as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of efforts that we had to take, I think new people who join will not need that sort of efforts.
Amazing.
There is a lot of now backing coming from even very large government organizations, from central government. There have been all kinds of regulations that have come in.
Mm-hmm.
Those regulations have now already percolated to municipal levels, to gram panchayats, to villages, now going forward there's going to be stricter enforcement as well from these regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is opportunity for a lot of entrepreneurs to really get into this with shorter lead times to.
So in this case, I would really like to talk to all those people who want to get into this kind of a business. Is that Anil would be there to support. If anybody wants to actually get into this, and if they want to know the nitty-gritty about this whole idea, I feel like you can always get in touch with Anil for that, and would be happy to give all the knowledge that he has if you want to start an enterprise. Am I okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the next thing goes in when we do this, when you convince people. So now the thing is you have to start seeing that people actually do the thing the way you want them to do things. And how is that been a journey?
So there I've been pleasantly surprised, and I'm really I would say positive about the way people want to change their behavior. This is growing, and a lot of communities know that they want to do things better. It's just that they don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you provide them the right platform, the right tools, the right methods, the right strategy, and organize it well for them, most communities are now looking forward to actually implementing these actions on the ground.
Okay.
And given that also regulations are coming in, that is also another incentive. And a lot of municipal authorities are now giving also financial benefits and incentives like tax rebates and
Yes.
things like that. So I think going forward, also the recycling industry is becoming more and more active. There is now potential to create resources out of, even financial resources out of recyclable materials.
Yes.
So going forward, I feel the economy is also now developing around this area, and I think a lot of opportunities. Now I could give you some numbers, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So to begin with, let's say, just think about how much garbage our country generates. I mean, if you take a wild guess, you won't be able to put a number on it, but the numbers are staggering. Like if you look at India today, the World Bank estimates that India generates something around 277 million tons of garbage every year. 277 million tons. So we can't even put our head around these numbers.
True.
So and something like 60% of this waste is actually compostable. Okay, 60%.
Of it.
Okay, such a huge percentage can actually be converted into a resource that goes into farming, into safe food, into all kinds of other unbelievable resource creation potential. Then another 30% is all your recyclable materials, like plastic, paper, cardboard, glass, Tetra packs, any sort of materials that you imagine that are being used in our daily lifestyle. About 30% of those can be found, some kind of recycling, reuse, upcycling opportunities exist. And it would just need about 15% to 10% of material that really needs to either reach some kind of a landfilling situation or a scientific method of disposal or burial or whatever.
So I'd just like to add one thing to it, Anil. Just the other day I was lucky enough to find a beautiful documentary on a lady called Veena. And she's in Australia, but she's from Mumbai. And what I found amazing was that she got the inspiration to recycle things from Mumbai.
Okay.
And now she does amazing work in Australia. And they have also come up with a lot of recyclable, what I would say, products that have come from recyclable materials. And I don't really remember her surname because that's what the documentary is. But we can always find her name by Veena. So I would also request audiences, if they want to really see what is the potential and what an Indian lady has done in Australia, you can see this documentary. Maybe we'll try to put up a description in our description under the YouTube video, where you can go and see this video also. Has your white collar job earlier helped you a lot in getting into this sector?
Yes, that's a very good question. So, yeah, obviously it has, because my experience working in the automobile industry, also coming from an engineering background, I think gave me the kind of rational way of thinking, how to set systems, how to organize, how to study a problem and then break it into its constituent parts, and then really analyze it and come with solutions, both on the technical aspect of it, but I think the more important aspect is also how to handle people, because waste management, I think I would say a new skill that I developed, which was not part of my former career, was engaging with so many different stakeholders, multiple stakeholders, with people from all kinds of income groups, because the auto industry is a very insulated industry. But this is such a wide industry. You meet people right from the waste picker category up to big business owners.
Yes.
We are talking to political people who are in the political establishment, people who are in administrative establishment. We are talking to public service people, citizens.
So, how do you feel as an engineer now? Do you feel that you are creating more of a, I would say, more meaningful than being on the other side, where you as an automobile engineer or working in the automobile industry were on the side where you were creating more waste but not converting into resources?
Yes. No, so that is extremely satisfying. Also, I think if you look deeper, the whole career of being an engineer is actually to solve problems of society ultimately, right? And what we are trying to do here is again solve real basic problems which nobody is looking at, because solid waste management is the lowest priority on anybody's list. Because that's why we see all the litter around our streets and all around our highways and our cities, waste being dumped all over the place, because it's really not anybody's priority. And we as engineers, I think ultimately we have to look at what is the impact of the way we lead our lifestyles, and we have to look at a more efficient ways of solving basic problems of society across the range of society, right from the lower, let's say the waste picker community itself. I won't want to call them a lower, that's the wrong word to use, but I would say they are as important people in our community as anybody else, and I think it's about bringing that equality in terms of the dignity of the kind of work that they do. I think it's as important to any large company or any such thing, where you're providing services. This is another service that waste pickers and waste workers provide, which needs that to be given that significant importance and dignity.
So I think you are talking about dignity, and we have always found that waste particularly related to women, and in this case mostly the menstrual thing, has been a big challenge, and it has been a very slow process where people are okay with segregating waste, but when it comes to menstruation waste, people are still a lot conservative. But what happens, it is also disposed in a very wrong way. Have you been able to really tackle that issue efficiently in all the societies that you work with?
So you're right, it's another big challenge. It's a hazardous waste stream.
Yes.
There's a lot of dignity issues involved in it. It's about who's going to collect it, who's going to handle it, who's going to dispose it properly. Right from the waste generator to the disposal, it's a problematic situation. So we've largely focused on trying to see the technology and the linkage of that waste to the end disposal is still a huge challenge.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and it's going to take a lot more time to find the right solutions. So in the meantime, our approach has always been to look at how can we prevent that waste from being generated itself in the first place, and how women, children can use sustainable method of handling menstrual waste, or even diapers, for example, children's diapers, for example. And there are many sustainable alternatives.
Yes.
And our focus has been to develop move people into these sustainable alternatives, and to look at, and you will be amazed actually, most people who have moved to those sustainable alternatives will never go back to the old habits, because they have experienced how healthy it is,
Yes.
how transforming it is, and it has actually transformed their lives permanently.
Okay.
And so we are looking at those kind of solutions to actually stop the generation of that waste.
So Anil, one more thing that comes into is like, yes, children using diapers, from women using menstrual
Yes.
products,
Yes.
and now the big issue that is coming in is adult diapers,
Yes.
and they are now becoming a big challenge.
Exactly.
Is that also addressed well, or that still remains a big question?
That is another big question mark, because adult diapers, because the volumes right now it's not as high as, for example, sanitary waste and babies diapers. This is still a section of waste management that is a little bit ignored.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously sustainable solutions can be found on similar lines as for children, right? And I think those ideas need to be promoted, and we have to prevent the use of unsustainable methods right from day one.
Yes.
And to really, and it's not a big issue, because there's a lot of marketing done by big corporations to try to push these unsustainable alternatives. But I think we have to look at our older generation. I mean, the solutions are available. We have to just look at how things happened maybe 2 generations ago, but repackage it in a new way that is possible for our current lifestyles. And it's possible. It's definitely possible.
So one thing is, yes, convincing people, but now making the team aware, the people who work with you,
Yes.
make them understand the psychology of people, make them understand the processes. How has that been? Has that been a challenge, or was it much better than convincing people?
So that is challenging in its own way, but I think at the same time the opportunities are so great, and the level of satisfaction you can derive is also so huge. Because let me just put some ideas on how we are working today. So we address today about 100 housing societies when it comes to kitchen waste, and we've got about 150 to 200 more customers who are working with us on a unique garden waste model that we have developed, where we collect leaves and branches and we make sure that it goes for soil development and mulching activities, instead of ending up in landfills or mixed waste situations. So we have a team today of around 23 people who are now part of ProEarth. And we started this journey by hiring people who are, let's say, daily wage workers, who are migrants, who are people who don't have a stable job situation. And most of our operational staff who move to various societies and provide services, we have trained them, we have developed them and we have given them an understanding of the dignity of this work. It's not related to, they are not people who are part of some undignified, they have to do some dirty work. It's not that. They are actually the people who clean the society up.
Yes.
So that perspective we have passed on to them. They understand their responsibility, and particularly when it relates to wet waste management, you can imagine it's a 7-day-a-week job.
Yes.
Because we can't allow even 1 day of waste to lie around
Accumulate.
unmanaged.
Yes.
So our people are on field 7 days a week through lockdowns. So we have had permissions that we have taken from the police, and we have been working through all the lockdowns with no real stop of work, no break in our working schedule.
So Anil, I would like to ask you in that, now people work on bio waste, or I would say it's organic waste. So what are the methodologies that you use? So you have some products in front of you that you use for your work. So can you explain those to us?
Yes. So our methods are very simple. Our approach is to try to use farming knowledge to try to convert organic materials into a resource that goes back in the farm. So we use organic methods. We use microbes like this. We have a microbial culture that has been developed by Innora, our partner organization, through whom we actually, they are, I would say, our mentors. We have learned everything that we know from Innora, and so we use their microbes for treatment of organic waste. And then we have an EM solution, which is a liquid that helps to, it's a microbial soup, I would say.
Yes.
And it's basically used to spray on organic materials to take away odors, because the microbes then act on the waste very rapidly and a lot of odor creating organisms are cut off from from the system and from the process, and then so it becomes an odor free sustainable way of treating organic waste. Then also what we do is we link the resources back to the market. So we have, for example, vermicompost that is generated from decomposing organic materials. We package it and we also sell it back into gardens, nurseries for people to use in their potted plants in the balconies, and to create the next level of value, which is to try to grow safe organic food as close to you as possible, and to try to avoid as much transportation of food materials, and the other side is to have safe food, because also a lot of our food now is subjected to a lot of chemicals and pesticides, and to try to avoid that chain as well through the linkage from waste to health. I think that's what we are really trying to focus on.
So now the question comes in, like, you have shown us the methodology, you have also shown what comes back, because now this is not a linear process, it is a circular.
Yes.
What goes in again comes out in a much better form, which can be reused again and again. So can you give me numbers, like, how much of waste you handle every day, and what the whole calculation is?
Okay, so today we are handling, like I told you, about 100 housing societies. So we handle the waste of about somewhere close to 15,000 residents and their families. We are talking about 15,000 families. Okay, and the total waste that we treat on a daily basis comes to somewhere between 7.5 to 8 tons per day.
Amazing.
Okay. In addition, we are also now doing somewhere around 40 tons per month of garden waste. So we clear about 40 to 50 truckloads of dry leaves, branches, and all that which we collect from housing complexes, from institutions, and we link it to NGOs who are doing plantation work, and so that they don't need to use any fertilizers, they don't need to buy any fertilizers, they just do mulching, and with the resources that are created from the brown leaves itself, that feeds back the soil, and a lot of these plantation NGOs have also given us feedback that their plantations are looking more healthy. Particularly, most of these plantations are on hill slopes. The next activity that we are going to embark on, which we have already in the last 3 months set up our own dry waste recycling facility. We have also now partnered with the NGO Gunj, through whom we are now going to look at collecting urban discards, which we will then manage and make sure that is also donated further for rural development programs. So we are trying to integrate. I think the other important thing for your viewers also to understand is this is a field of collaborations.
It is.
We have to collaborate with as many agencies as possible.
People feel that if you are doing something for the society, it is not that profitable. You don't really make that much of money. Obviously, you don't make that much of money because you are working with so many people. But what I see is, since 2014, the graph has been rising. So how the trend has been with respect to your business? How has it grown for the last 7 years?
So I would say we are quite satisfied with the way we have grown. So we started off, in 2014. Our revenues were something around 4.5 to 5 lakhs. Today, we are doing a revenue of close to 80 lakhs. Okay, so that is the kind of growth chart that we have done in the 5 years. I think there is a huge potential to grow in the coming, because it's about how we can scale now, and it's about looking to see how we can do larger, more impactful projects with, let's say, gram panchayats, municipalities, nagar parishads.
But still, at the end of the day, it is not the material that you work with, it is still the people. One side is where you have your own team, they have their own things, and then there is one more part, that people, because at the end of the day, somebody has to keep the waste out of the house. We can't go inside and do things the way we want to do it. But then, in this case, what do you really expect from people? What do you expect from people who take your services?
So I think what we expect from waste generators or citizens is to take some very simple but conscious actions at home. Most of these actions don't require any efforts. I think it's about change management that requires that effort, and that kind of change management is needed in any part of your life. If you want to improve something, if you want to improve your fitness, you will need to take that sort of action. if you want to improve the health of your city, you'll again need to take that small action, a little bit of pain for a little bit of time, and eventually you'll see that once your habit changes, it's an effortless activity. It's about setting a system in your home so that you gather your waste in different containers, in separate containers, and to really understand that those little small changes that you make in your home are the ones that multiply and create the huge impact then.
So I would really like to talk to our audience. I would request that you please like our video, share it, because this is not about publicizing something. It is all about a transformation, and the more we share, the more we will have more and more people coming into this idea about sustainability. So I would say please do like this video, do share this video with others, and I would also like to appeal to many of those engineers who celebrated that day yesterday. Please come to this side of the resource management. One is, yes, it is about creating products, creating things for the market, but then at the end of its life, the same product is available to be recycled again and again. The more people like Anil come into this, the more we are going to see an amazing earth, and in that I would say India would be an inspiration, the rural areas. And now what we see is, when we enter a village, we see a huge dump right outside it. How to solve these problems? I feel today's interview with Anil would have given you an amazing insight that all these things are possible, doable, we can do it, and it is not that difficult. And people like Anil would always be there to help out. Am I right?
Absolutely.
So what is the last message, or what is the message you would like to give our audience?
I think the final message is, I think going with sustainable alternatives or changing your lifestyle towards sustainability, I think is not difficult. It's about being conscious about how you're impacting the world on an individual level, and then really looking at simple methods.
We are going to see a small model that he has set up in his office to showcase what is the methodology they use for composting resources.
So here is a small demonstration of actually how we do community composting and how we set up these composting facilities at housing complexes. So this is like a small, I would say, a composting pit. Our focus is to ensure that the infrastructure that we develop is easy to set up. It can be done by any mason or any fabricator. It is cost effective, easy to repair, easy to set up for the first time. So the idea is that we create pits like this made out of basic brickwork and masonry work using cement, and on top of it normally we have a lid which is made of fabricated steel, mild steel, and on top we normally have a shed to protect it from the rain. So here we've made it out of glass just to kind of demonstrate the layers that we set up in the composting facility. So at the bottom layer we use bricks and brick pieces. On top of that, gravel stone. So this is called the filter media layer. So what this does is it prevents liquids that are generated during the solid content that is generated during composting from sort of flowing in and leaving the pit through the drainage hole that we have left aside. The idea is that the liquid and the solid get separated through this filter media, and then on top we have a thick layer of garden waste. So we use a lot of dry materials, brown leaves, we use coconut fibers, and so you see again here there's a potential to use a waste material back into a resource that can be used for composting. At the top we have the actual operational layer, which is made out of a material called the compost matrix, which is a mixture of various natural materials which we put together, which absorbs odors, also absorbs moisture, and make sure that the entire composting system is odor free. Then while we are operating this, what we do is we add the fresh waste on top every day. We make sort of layers on it, and then we mix it in this top layer, and then add cultures and bacterial and fungal microorganisms so that they begin to feed on it. In some cases where the space is available, we also use earthworms so that we can get the highest quality of composting. But in many city circumstances where space is constrained, then we don't use earthworms because they don't survive in those conditions. And ultimately, our people who go and provide the service in the field, they manage these pits every day. They make sure that the waste is segregated, it's clean, not mixed with other plastic and so on. They remove all these materials before it is loaded into these compost pits. And then we operate it, make sure that on a daily basis a loading sequence is followed, a turning sequence is followed, and this requires very minimum labor. It requires only intense labor during the harvest where we need to remove a lot of material, but otherwise in daily conditions, a 100 flat society would require not more than 45 minutes to 50 minutes of our person's intervention on a daily basis. So we ensure that our people move around, and also behind every person there is almost 1 ton of waste being processed. So that is the kind of performance that we can draw out of.
An amazing interview today, and as I said earlier, we need people like Anil to get into this kind of a venture, because amazing materials are getting formed at the innovation level, but a lot need to be done on how to reuse those materials again and again, because now they are coming in combinations, they are becoming more and more complex, and we need people like Anil to come and give solutions to us. So we thank Anil a lot for this wonderful interview today. Thank you, Anil, and best of luck for all your efforts. I do see that many people who are interested in this particular sector would get in touch with you and would ask you some very, very valuable questions.